Hey guys! Tonight we're stepping into the icy winds and rugged landscapes of the Viking Age, but we're not here to talk about raiding or exploration. Instead, we're going to delve into something far more intimate, yet equally brutal: the Viking approach to death and the journey to the afterlife. Imagine yourself standing on a windswept shore, the smell of salt and wood smoke heavy in the air. A longship, sleek and powerful, rests on the sand, not ready for a voyage of conquest, but for a final one-way trip. The air is thick with a mixture of reverence and raw grief, a guttural sound that seems to rise from the very earth. You see a figure, perhaps a chieftain, lying still on the deck, surrounded by grave goods. This isn't a quiet, somber affair as you might know it. This is a spectacle, a ritual, designed to honor the dead, appease the gods, and ensure a glorious passage to the next world. It's a journey steeped in belief, violence, and profound respect for those who have passed beyond the veil. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, tell me, where are you tuning in from tonight, and what time is it there? I'm always curious to see how far these sleepy stories travel. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand on the edge of the Viking world, a world where life is harsh, death is ever present, and the afterlife is a tangible, often desired, destination. For the Norse people, death wasn't an end, it was merely a transition, a new beginning on a different plane of existence. And how you entered that next world was of paramount importance, directly influencing your fate within it. This wasn't a gentle drifting into eternal slumber. This was a deliberate, often elaborate, and sometimes terrifyingly violent send-off. Your journey, after your last breath, was just beginning, and your family and community were there to ensure you had the best possible start. For the ordinary Viking, someone who perhaps tilled the land, fished the seas, or crafted simple tools, the funeral would be less extravagant but no less significant. Your body might be laid in a simple grave, perhaps with a few personal possessions, a knife, a comb, a spindle, depending on your gender and status. Sometimes, your grave would be marked by a simple stone or a mound of earth. But even these seemingly humble burials carried deep meaning. The items buried with you were not just sentimental trinkets. They were tools for your journey, provisions for your new existence, or symbols of your identity in the afterlife. You might need your axe to clear a path, your eating utensils for the eternal feast, or your weaving implements to continue your craft in the halls of the gods. The act of burial itself was a profound act of respect, ensuring your spirit found peace and didn't linger to trouble the living. For the more prominent members of Viking society, the wealthy farmers, skilled warriors, or respected chieftains, your funeral would be a much grander affair, often reflecting your status in life. These rituals were not just about the individual, they were about reinforcing the community's power, wealth, and spiritual beliefs. Imagine the preparations: your body would be laid out, probably cleaned and dressed in your finest attire. The air would be filled with the sounds of lamentation, but also with the preparations for a feast, because a funeral was often as much about celebrating the life lived as it was about mourning the death. It was a communal gathering, strengthening the bonds between the living and honoring the transition of one of their own. One of the most striking aspects of Viking funerary practices is the concept of grave goods. These weren't simply tokens. They were considered vital for the deceased's journey and life in the afterlife. What you were buried with spoke volumes about who you were. A warrior might be interred with his sword, shield, helmet, and even his horse. A wealthy woman might be accompanied by her finest jewelry. Spindle whorls, keys symbolizing her authority over the household, and perhaps even a full set of kitchen implements. Tools, weapons, jewelry, food, drink, and even animals were all placed within the grave. This practice highlights a core Viking belief that the afterlife mirrored the earthly realm, and you would need your possessions, your status, and your comforts there just as you did in life. Think about that for a moment, your most prized possessions, your most useful tools, all put into the ground or set ablaze, forever removed from the world of the living, purely for the benefit of the dead. It's a powerful testament to their belief system. The type of burial also varied significantly, while simple earthen graves were common. Wealthier individuals might be interred in burial mounds, impressive earthen structures raised over the grave, visible for miles. These mounds served as permanent markers, often signaling the resting place of important ancestors and claiming territory for their descendants. Think of them as ancient monuments, silent sentinels guarding the memories of the powerful. The effort required to construct these mounds, moving tons of earth and stone, speaks volumes about the importance placed on honoring the dead. It wasn't a quick job, it was a communal undertaking, cementing the legacy of the deceased. Another fascinating, and perhaps more unsettling, aspect was the practice of cremation for many Vikings. Burning the body was the preferred method of dispatching the dead. The pyre would be built, often massive, and the body, sometimes with grave goods, would be placed upon it. The smoke rising to the heavens was believed to carry the soul to the afterlife. After the fire subsided, the ashes and any remaining bones would be collected and placed in an urn or a small burial mound. There's a particular account from the Arab traveler Ahmad ibn Fadlan, who witnessed a Viking funeral on the Volga River in the 10th century. His detailed, albeit sometimes sensationalized, account provides a rare glimpse into these practices, especially the ship burial of a chieftain, while we'll delve deeper into his account later. It's a primary source that offers chilling insights. The choice between burial and cremation likely depended on regional customs, individual preferences, and the specific beliefs of the community. Some scholars suggest that cremation was seen as a faster way to release the soul, while burial kept the deceased connected to the land and ancestors. Historians still debate the precise theological reasons behind choosing cremation versus inhumation burial. Was it about sending the soul directly to Odin, or keeping the physical remains near the ancestral land? The evidence suggests a fluidity in practice, rather than a single, universal rule. You also need to consider the role of feasts and celebrations. A Viking funeral was often a major social event, a gathering of the clan. Food and drink would be plentiful. This wasn't just about mourning, it was about reaffirming social bonds, transferring power if a chieftain had died, and honoring the memory of the deceased through shared revelry. Imagine the strong, dark ale flowing freely, the roasted meats, the sounds of storytelling and lament interspersed with hearty laughter. It was a complex mix of sorrow and celebration, a testament to the Viking understanding of life and death as interconnected cycles. So, as you begin to settle into the quiet darkness, let the images of windswept shores, grave goods, and ancient rituals fill your mind. This is just the beginning of our exploration into the brutal truths and fascinating complexities of Viking funerals. The journey to the afterlife was as significant as life itself, prepared with meticulous care, profound belief, and an unwavering respect for the passage beyond. You close your eyes and the image of the longship on the shore remains. But now, the focus shifts from the grand spectacle to the grim, intimate work that precedes it. You are privy to the chilling, meticulous preparation of the deceased, a process steeped in ritual, hygiene or the lack thereof, and a profound respect for the transition from life to the unknown. This isn't just about readying a body for burial, it's about preparing a soul for its eternal journey, ensuring it is unburdened and properly equipped for the halls of Odin. Or perhaps the less glorious, but still significant, realms of hell. Your first impression is the cold, The air bites, even indoors. A reminder that preservation techniques as you know them are centuries away. The body of the deceased, whether a humble farmer or a revered chieftain, must be handled quickly and with purpose. The immediate aftermath of death involves cleaning the body. Though this cleaning might differ vastly from modern embalming, in some instances, particularly for significant individuals, internal organs might be removed. This practice, while not universal, is documented in certain archaeological finds and historical accounts, suggesting a pragmatic approach to slowing decomposition, especially if a grand funeral was planned to allow time for people to gather. Imagine the grim determination required for such a task, performed by individuals specifically designated for this sacred, yet unsettling, duty. The deceased would then be dressed. This wasn't a simple matter of slipping into a shroud. Often, the body would be clothed in its finest attire, garments that reflected the individual's status and identity in life. For a chieftain, this could mean rich woolen tunics, perhaps embroidered with silver or gold thread, fine linen undergarments, and even furs for warmth. For a woman, elaborate gowns, intricate brooches to fasten her clothes, and possibly a finely woven head covering. These clothes weren't just for appearance, they were considered part of the individual's essence, necessary for presenting themselves appropriately in the afterlife. You might even see grave clothes specially made for the occasion, not just garments worn in life. Think of the care, the precision. As these final garments are placed, a last act of love and respect for the departed. Next comes the adornment. Personal jewelry, amulets, and symbols of status would be added. A warrior might have his favorite arm rings, a necklace with Thor's hammer, or a belt buckle indicating his rank. A woman might be adorned with her most prized beads, brooches, and rings. Perhaps even a set of keys, signifying her authority over the household. These weren't just decorative. They were believed to carry spiritual significance, protecting the deceased on their journey or ensuring their recognition in the spiritual realms. The very act of placing these items on the body was a prayer, a silent wish for their safe passage. The position of the body within the grave or on the pyre was also significant. While some burials show bodies simply laid out, others display specific postures, perhaps curled in a fetal position, or arranged to face a particular direction. These details, often revealed through archaeological excavation, hint at underlying beliefs about the soul's path or its connection to certain cosmic elements. For example, some burials seem to be oriented towards the rising sun, symbolizing rebirth, or towards the north, a direction often associated with the land of the dead in Norse mythology. Historians still debate the precise meaning and consistency of these body orientations, often finding regional variations that suggest diverse local customs rather than a monolithic set of rules. Now, consider the concept of travel provisions. The Vikings believed the journey to the afterlife was long and arduous, just as a living Viking would pack supplies for a long voyage. So too did the dead. This meant placing food and drink within the grave. Sometimes these were simple. Dried provisions, a hunk of dried meat, some bread, or a container of ale or mead. For the wealthy, the provisions could be much more elaborate, including entire animal carcasses, joints of beef, whole sheep, even elaborate cuts of pork, all meant to sustain the deceased on their arduous voyage. Imagine setting out on a journey and needing to pack for eternity. These provisions weren't just practical, they were symbolic, ensuring the departed would not face hunger or thirst in the lands beyond. Animals, too, played a significant role in the preparation for important individuals, especially warriors or chieftains. Their horse might be sacrificed and buried alongside them, ready to carry them to the afterlife. Dogs, often loyal companions, might also be included. These animal sacrifices were believed to serve the deceased in the next world, providing transport, companionship, or even spiritual guidance. The act of sacrificing an animal was a profound ritual, connecting the earthly realm to the divine, offering a living being to accompany the departed. It speaks to a deep, visceral connection between humans and their animals, extending beyond life itself. One peculiar and often unsettling aspect of the preparation was the potential inclusion of slaves or servants. While we'll delve deeper into human sacrifice later, it's worth noting here that some very high-status burials, particularly ship burials, contain evidence of individuals who appear to have been sacrificed to accompany their lord or lady into the afterlife. This grim act of preparation highlights the extreme hierarchies of Viking society and the profound belief in the continuation of earthly status beyond death. The body of the deceased chieftain might be tended by a slave woman who would then be ritually killed to join him. This is a chilling detail, revealing the brutal depths of their faith. The entire process, from cleaning and dressing to placing grave goods and sacrificing animals, was overseen by specific individuals within the community. For significant burials, a vulva, a female shaman or seer, might play a crucial role, guiding the rituals, communicating with the spiritual world, and ensuring the proper passage of the soul. Her presence would lend immense spiritual authority to the proceedings, guaranteeing that every step was performed correctly to appease the gods and secure a favorable afterlife. Her incantations and rituals were as vital as the physical preparations. So, as you slowly drift into slumber, picture the solemnity and the intensity of these preparations. The precise dressing of the body, the careful placement of every tool and trinket, the sacrifice of beloved animals, each action imbued with meaning, each step a prayer for the soul's safe passage. This meticulous work wasn't just about saying goodbye, it was about equipping the dead for their eternal journey, a testament to the Viking belief that death was merely a doorway to another, equally vibrant existence. You close your eyes and the image of the carefully prepared body lingers. But now, your attention is drawn to the fascinating array of objects placed around it. In the Viking world, grave goods and offerings weren't mere trinkets. They were essential companions, provisions, and symbols, ensuring the deceased's identity and status continued seamlessly into the afterlife. These were items chosen with purpose, reflecting the individual's life, their wealth, and their perceived needs in the realms beyond the living. What you were buried with wasn't just a testament to your earthly possessions. It was your passport, your toolkit, and your wardrobe for eternity. Imagine, if you will, the sheer variety. For a warrior, the most obvious grave goods would be their weapons. A sword, often highly decorated and a prized possession, would be laid beside them, sometimes still in its scabbard. A shield, often broken or symbolically killed to accompany its owner, might be placed over the body. A spear, an axe, and a bow with a quiver of arrows could also be included. These weren't just for show. The belief was that the warrior would need these implements in the afterlife, whether to fight alongside Odin in Valhalla or to simply defend themselves on their arduous journey. Think of the weight of a Viking sword, the cold steel against your hand. Now imagine it being placed for a journey from which there is no return. For a woman, particularly one of status, her grave goods would highlight her vital role in the household and community. Keys, often found in women's graves, symbolized her authority over the household and its provisions. Spindle whorls and weaving implements spoke of her skill in producing textiles, a crucial economic activity. Intricate brooches, beads of glass and amber, and fine silver or bronze jewelry would adorn her body, reflecting her wealth and beauty. Personal grooming tools, such as combs and ear spoons, were also common, suggesting a continued concern for appearance in the afterlife. You might even find small chests or boxes, possibly containing personal keepsakes or a dowry for the next world. Tools of all kinds were vital inclusions. A blacksmith might be buried with his hammer and tongs, a carpenter with his adze and chisels. Farmers could have a scythe or a spade. These weren't just sentimental, they reflected the Viking belief that your skills and profession would continue to be relevant in the afterlife. The cosmos of the Norse was a place of ongoing activity, and you would need your earthly expertise there just as much as here. This idea of bringing your craft with you is a powerful testament to how deeply intertwined a Viking's identity was with their work. Then there are the animals. We briefly touched upon horses and dogs, but the variety could be broader. Cows, sheep, and even fowl might be sacrificed and placed in the grave, providing food, transport, or companionship. The discovery of various animal remains within Viking burial sites paints a vivid picture of these accompanying sacrifices. Imagine burying your most prized horse, not just out of love, but out of a fervent belief that it will carry you into your glorious eternal rest. It's a poignant illustration of the Viking bond with their livestock. Seeing them as essential partners in life and in death, food and drink too, were considered crucial offerings. Jars of ale or mead, cuts of meat, and loaves of bread have been found in graves, intended to sustain the deceased on their journey or to be enjoyed in their new realm. It wasn't uncommon for entire joints of meat to be placed in the burial chamber, providing a banquet for the departed. This highlights the practical and generous nature of the grave offerings, ensuring the deceased would not suffer want in the next life. For the very wealthy and prominent, the grave goods could be truly extravagant. Think of the Oseberg ship burial, where a wealthy woman or two was interred with a fully equipped ship, 5 ornately carved animal heads, 4 sledges, a cart, textiles, and numerous household items. This was not just a burial, it was a museum of Viking life, designed to provide every conceivable comfort and status symbol in the afterlife. The sheer effort and wealth invested in such burials speak volumes about the importance of securing a powerful and well-equipped passage for their elite, beyond personal possessions. Sometimes even entire carriages or sleds have been found, implying that the deceased would travel in style, boats, or even the full ship itself in ship burials, were the ultimate grave good, serving as the literal vehicle for the soul's journey across the cosmic ocean. These were not mere symbolic models, often. They were functional vessels, prepared for their final spiritual voyage, one common, yet deeply personal. Grave good was the simple comb, found in numerous Viking graves. It suggests a continuous concern for personal grooming and appearance. Even in death, it's a small detail that offers a touch of relatable humanity amidst the grandeur and brutality of other offerings. Imagine a Viking, even after death, wanting to ensure their hair was tidy for their arrival in the halls of their ancestors. Historians still debate the extent to which these grave goods indicate a literal belief in their use in the afterlife, versus a symbolic representation of earthly status and remembrance. While the texts and sagas lean towards a literal interpretation, the archaeological evidence sometimes suggests a combination of both. Some items might have been ritually killed, broken before burial, perhaps to release their spirit to join the deceased, or to prevent grave robbing. The exact purpose behind every item, and the precise belief system attached to it, remains a complex area of scholarly inquiry. So, as you drift into a peaceful slumber, let your mind wander through the vast array of grave goods, the shining swords, the delicate brooches, the sturdy tools, and the loyal animals. Each item placed with careful intention, each offering a silent prayer for the journey. It was a world where death didn't mean an end to needing your favorite things, but rather a profound continuation of existence. Meticulously planned and generously provisioned for, you feel the gentle rocking beneath you. Not of a cozy cradle, but of a grand vessel. The scent of salt air is strong, mixed with the acrid tang of burning wood. You are witnessing one of the most iconic and dramatic of Viking funeral rites, the ship burial, and the towering pyre. A spectacular send-off designed to transport the most esteemed individuals into the afterlife with unparalleled glory. This wasn't just a funeral, it was a cosmic voyage, a grand performance, and a powerful statement of wealth and spiritual conviction. Imagine standing on a raised mound, overlooking a fjord or a wide river. Before you, a magnificent longship. Perhaps one that once carried warriors on daring raids or explorers to new lands, is being prepared for its final journey. It's not floating in the water, but carefully positioned on land, often within a specially dug trench or a prepared burial chamber. This ship, a symbol of power, travel, and identity, is not merely a container. It is the ultimate grave good, the vessel for the soul's passage across the cosmic ocean to the realms of the gods. The sheer scale of such an undertaking is immense, requiring significant resources, skilled craftsmanship, and communal effort. Testifying to the paramount importance of the deceased, the body of the chieftain, or the high-status individual would be carefully placed within the ship. Often, a makeshift burial chamber or tent would be constructed within the ship itself to house the deceased and their accompanying treasures. As we discussed, these treasures were vast and varied weapons, armor, tools, jewelry, cooking implements, and even entire feasting sets. Animals, too, would be sacrificed and placed within the ship, horses ready to gallop into the next world. Loyal dogs, even cows or sheep to provide sustenance. Imagine the scene of veritable treasure trove, packed meticulously around the deceased, ready for their eternal needs. Perhaps the most famous and well-documented account of a Viking ship burial with cremation comes from Ahmad ibn Fadlan, an Arab diplomat who witnessed a Viking Rus's funeral on the Volga River in the 10th century. His account, while controversial and possibly exaggerated in some details, provides an unparalleled, albeit brutal, eyewitness perspective. He describes the elaborate preparations, the feasting, and the horrifying ritual sacrifice of a female slave who volunteered to accompany her master to the afterlife. This particular burial culminated in the ship being set ablaze, transforming the vessel and its contents into a towering inferno, sending smoke and souls heavenward. This practice of cremation on a ship pyre was particularly dramatic. The ship, loaded with its precious cargo and the deceased, would be set alight, often with flaming arrows or torches. The flames would consume the vessel, the body, and the grave goods, sending a vast plume of smoke spiraling towards the sky. The belief was that the smoke carried the soul directly to Odin's Hall, Valhalla, or other glorious afterlives. Imagine the roaring blaze, the cracking timbers, the heat on your face, and the immense column of smoke rising against the backdrop of the northern sky. It was a spectacular, almost terrifying farewell, designed to be remembered by the living and to guarantee the deceased a powerful entry into the next world. Not all ship burials involved cremation. However, many notable ship burials, like the famous Oseberg ship or the Gokstad ship in Norway, were inhumation burials. Here, the meticulously prepared ship, complete with its deceased and all their grave goods, would be carefully pulled ashore and then buried in a massive earthen mound. The ship essentially became the coffin, sealed within the earth. Preserving its contents for centuries, imagine the sheer logistical challenge of moving such a large vessel inland, carefully positioning it, and then constructing a colossal mound of earth over it. These were not spontaneous acts, but carefully planned, monumental undertakings that could take weeks or months, requiring the labor of an entire community. The choice between ship cremation and ship inhumation likely depended on regional traditions, the status of the deceased, and perhaps even the available resources. Both methods conveyed immense prestige and belief in the afterlife. The cremation offered a direct, fiery ascent to the gods, while inhumation created a permanent, monumental resting place. Visually asserting the deceased's power and the family's claim to the land for generations. Historians still debate the specific symbolic differences between ship cremation and inhumation. Did one signify a more direct journey to Valhalla, while the other emphasized a connection to the ancestral land? The regional variations suggest local theological nuances rather than a single, universal meaning, beyond the ship itself. Sometimes smaller boats or even large wagons designed for transport would be included in land burials, particularly if a full ship wasn't practical or available. These symbolic vessels still represented the journey, ensuring the deceased had a means of traversing the landscapes of the afterlife. The concept of needing a form of transport to the other side was deeply ingrained. Whether it was a magnificent longship, a humble rowboat, or a sturdy horse, the sheer effort and resources poured into these ship burials underscore the Viking belief in the continuation of life and status after death. These were not simply emotional farewells. They were investments in the future of the deceased, ensuring their comfort, power, and glory in the realms beyond the living. They were also powerful statements to the living, reinforcing the authority and lineage of the ruling elite. So, as the image of the burning ship or the silent burial mound fades into the quiet of your room, let your mind ponder the profound significance of these rituals. The Vikings, a people often remembered for their raids and ferocity, also possessed a deeply complex and rich spiritual life. Nowhere more evident than in their dramatic and brutal send-offs to the eternal unknown. You feel a shiver, not from the cold, but from a deep, primal unease. The grand ship burial, the lavish grave goods, they all point to a world where death was a journey. But sometimes that journey involved a horrifying price. Tonight, you confront the brutal truth of human sacrifice. A dark, unsettling practice that occasionally marked the most elite Viking funerals. This isn't a comfortable history, but it's an undeniable part of their complex belief system. A chilling testament to the lengths they would go to ensure a chieftain's glorious passage into the afterlife. The most vivid and harrowing account of human sacrifice in a Viking funeral comes, once again, from the eyewitness testimony of Ahmad ibn Fadlan. He describes, in unsettling detail, the funeral of a Russ's Viking chieftain. After the chieftain died, a young slave girl volunteered to be sacrificed to accompany him to the afterlife. Now, the term volunteered itself is a matter of intense historical debate. Was it true free will, driven by profound belief in the promise of a place in the afterlife with her master? Or was it coercion, subtle or overt? A societal expectation that left her with no real choice. Ibn Fadlan's account suggests a mix of both, painting a picture of a girl who, after days of feasting and preparation, willingly submitted to her fate. Possibly intoxicated or in a trance-like state, imagine the scene he describes for 10 days. The chieftain's body is laid out, and his wealth is gathered. During this time, the slave girl who has chosen to die with him is cared for, feasted, and given intoxicating drinks. She is adorned with fine clothing, almost like a bride. Then, on the day of the cremation, she is led to the ship before she is killed. She is subjected to a ritual involving several old women, referred to as the Angel of Death, who oversee the gruesome process. She passes through a tent where the chieftain lies, greeting each of his family members, and finally enters a small tent within the ship. Here, she is ritually strangled and then stabbed, ensuring her spirit joins her master. This chilling detail highlights the extreme reverence for the chieftain's journey and the belief that his earthly retinue, even in death, must continue, archaeological evidence, while not as explicit as Ibn Fadlan's narrative, does corroborate the existence of human sacrifice in some high-status Viking burials in several grave sites, particularly large ship or mound burials. Human remains have been found alongside the primary deceased that show signs consistent with ritualistic killing. For example, individuals might be found decapitated, or with evidence of blunt force trauma that suggests a sacrificial death rather than natural causes or battle. These secondary burials are often of younger individuals, sometimes women or slaves, suggesting they were intended as attendants or companions for the primary deceased in the afterlife. The motivations behind such brutal acts are complex and deeply rooted in Viking cosmology. The belief was that the afterlife, particularly for a chieftain or a powerful warrior, mirrored the earthly realm, just as a lord had servants and companions in life. He would need them in death. The sacrificed individuals were believed to serve the deceased in the next world, ensuring their comfort, status, and continued power. It was an ultimate act of devotion, a profound display of belief in the continuity of existence beyond the physical body. It was also a terrifying display of power by the living elite, a stark reminder that their authority extended even to the very lives of others. The angel of death figure described by Ibn Fadlan is a fascinating and terrifying detail. This old woman, seemingly a priestess or a ritual specialist, was responsible for the actual killing of the slave girl. Her role underscores the ritualistic nature of the act, suggesting it was not a random murder but a sacred ceremony, performed according to specific traditions and beliefs. Her presence lent spiritual authority and grim solemnity to the proceedings. Ensuring the sacrifice was properly conducted to appease the gods and benefit the deceased, historians still debate the prevalence and specific circumstances of human sacrifice in Viking society. While Ibn Fadlan's account is a singular, explicit narrative, archaeological evidence is less clear-cut and more open to interpretation. Some scholars argue that human sacrifice was rare, perhaps limited to only the highest status burials or specific cultic practices, while others suggest it might have been more common than the surviving evidence indicates. The very term volunteer in Ibn Fadlan's account is heavily scrutinized. Was it a genuine spiritual calling? Or was the social pressure so immense that volunteering was the only palatable option for certain individuals, particularly slaves? It's crucial to remember that our understanding of Viking culture comes from a mix of archaeological finds, sagas often written down centuries later by Christian scribes, and a few foreign accounts like Ibn Fadlan's, which may have been influenced by cultural bias or a desire for dramatic storytelling. The truth likely lies somewhere in between, but the evidence for ritualistic human killing in certain high-status contexts is compelling. It's a stark reminder that while Viking culture produced magnificent art, advanced seafaring technology, and a vibrant mythological tradition, it also contained elements that deeply disturb modern sensibilities. So, as you drift towards sleep, let the chilling details of human sacrifice serve as a powerful testament to the intensity of Viking belief. It was a world where loyalty, status, and the journey to the afterlife sometimes demanded the ultimate price. A brutal truth that underscores the profound differences between their world and our own. You close your eyes and the image of the human sacrifice fades, replaced by the hushed whispers of ancient wisdom. You are now stepping into the realm of the spiritual guide, the interpreter of fate. For in the Viking world, the vulva, a revered female shaman or seer, played a crucial role, bridging the worlds of the living and the dead, and guiding the spiritual journey of the departed. She wasn't merely a mystic. She was a powerful figure, a conduit for divine knowledge, and an indispensable presence in the most significant life and death rituals. Imagine a scene, perhaps in a dim, smoke-filled longhouse or a sacred grove. A woman stands, her presence commanding, her eyes holding an ancient knowledge. She might be adorned with special attire staff, a distinctive hood or cloak, perhaps even carrying a bag filled with herbs, bones, and other ritualistic tools. This is the vulva, a term that essentially means wand carrier or bearer of a magic staff. She is not a priestess in the traditional sense, but more of a shaman, someone who could enter altered states of consciousness to communicate with the gods, the spirits of the dead, and other supernatural entities. Her role was to divine the future, interpret omens, and provide guidance on matters of life and death, in the context of Viking funerals. The vulva's presence was paramount, especially for high-status individuals. Her expertise was crucial to ensure the deceased's safe passage to the afterlife and to appease the gods. She would oversee the complex rituals, making sure every step was performed correctly, from the meticulous preparation of the body to the placement of grave goods and, as we've discussed, even the chilling act of human sacrifice. Her understanding of the spiritual landscape, the intricate paths to Valhalla, Helheim, or other realms, was vital. She would perform incantations, chant verses, and perhaps even enter a trance-like state to commune with the spirits, seeking blessings for the departed or interpreting messages from the other side. The vulva's power came from her connection to Satyr, a form of Old Norse magic associated with prophecy, divination, and manipulation of fate. Practicing Satyr was often considered effeminate for men, which is why the vulva, a female figure, held such unique authority in this spiritual domain. Her rituals often involved singing specific chants, known as Vardlaker, to summon spirits or to draw power. Imagine the hypnotic rhythm of her voice, the flickering firelight, and the heavy scent of herbs, all contributing to an atmosphere charged with spiritual energy. Her ability to see into the future, to interpret dreams, and to understand the will of the gods made her an indispensable advisor to chieftains and kings. Not just mourners, her specific duties at a funeral might include purifying the space, blessing the grave goods, and guiding the souls of the sacrificed individuals. In Ibn Fadlan's account, the angel of death who oversees the slave girl's sacrifice is believed by many historians to be a vulva figure, highlighting the grim and powerful nature of her authority and such ultimate rites. She wasn't just observing, she was actively orchestrating the transition, ensuring that the spirits of both the chieftain and his companion reached their intended destination. This suggests a spiritual role that went beyond mere mourning. Actively facilitating the afterlife journey, the vulva often traveled from place to place, offering her services to different communities, further solidifying her enigmatic and revered status. She was distinct from other members of society. She lived on the fringes, perhaps deliberately maintaining an aura of mystery and otherworldliness. Her power was respected, but perhaps also feared, as she dealt with forces beyond ordinary human comprehension. People sought her counsel for everything from predicting the outcome of a battle to interpreting a strange dream, making her a central figure in the spiritual lives of many. Archaeological discoveries have provided fascinating insights into the vulva's material culture. For instance, some burials, particularly those of high-status women, contain specific artifacts associated with Satyr practitioners, such as staffs sometimes elaborately decorated, small bags containing magical tools, seeds, or hallucinogenic plants. One notable example is the Firekat vulva's grave in Denmark, which contained a staff, a small box with magical herbs, and a distinctive set of clothing, all pointing to the burial of a powerful ritual specialist. These finds corroborate the literary accounts and bring the vulva's role to life, reminding you that these were not just mythological figures, but real, influential people. Historians still debate the extent of the vulva's political influence and whether their spiritual authority translated directly into secular power. While they were clearly revered and consulted by rulers, their power stemmed from their perceived connection to the divine. rather than traditional leadership roles. Some scholars suggest they acted as crucial advisors, shaping decisions through prophecy and spiritual guidance, while others emphasize their primarily ritualistic function. Regardless, their unique position at the intersection of the human and spirit worlds made them incredibly potent figures in Viking society. So, as you drift into a peaceful slumber, imagine the vulva's presence at the edge of the burial mound, her chants mingling with the wind, her gaze fixed on the journey of the departed. She was a silent, powerful guardian, ensuring that death was not an end, but a meticulously guided passage into the complex, interconnected realms of the Norse cosmos. Her role illuminates the deep spiritual dimensions of Viking life and death. Far beyond the image of mere warriors and raiders, you close your eyes and the chilling presence of the vulva fades, replaced by a sense of vastness, of endless possibilities. You are now contemplating the most fundamental question for any departing soul, the afterlife. For the Vikings, this wasn't a singular destination, but a multifaceted cosmos of realms, Valhalla, Helheim, and beyond, each offering a distinct destiny based on how you lived. And, more importantly, how you died. This intricate tapestry of spiritual landscapes shaped their worldview, their actions in life, and the very rituals of their death. Your journey, after your final breath, was a complex navigation of these otherworldly domains. The most famous and perhaps most coveted afterlife for a Viking warrior was Valhalla. Imagine a magnificent hall, built from the shields of fallen warriors and roofed with their spears. Nestled within the glorious realm of Asgard, home of the Aesir gods, presided over by Odin, the Allfather. Valhalla was the ultimate reward for those who died bravely in battle. Here, the Einherjar, the honored dead, spent their days feasting, drinking mead from the horns of goats, and engaging in glorious combat practice. Only to be resurrected each evening, their wounds healed, ready for another day of battle and revelry. Their ultimate purpose was to prepare for Ragnarok, the final battle at the end of the world, where they would fight alongside Odin against the forces of chaos. For a Viking warrior, to die sword in hand was the most honorable death, ensuring a place in this warrior's paradise. The brutal ship burials, the accompanying weapons, the human sacrifices, all were designed to ensure this glorious passage. However, Valhalla was not the only destination. For those who died a peaceful or ignoble death of old age, illness, or in their beds, the primary destination was typically Helheim. This was not a place of torment in the Christian sense, but rather a cold, dim, misty realm in the underworld, ruled by the goddess Hel, Loki's daughter. Imagine a desolate landscape, shrouded in perpetual twilight, where the souls of the unheroic dead wandered. It wasn't a place of suffering, but rather a place of dullness, a quiet existence devoid of the glory and feasting of Valhalla. While perhaps less glamorous, it was still a recognized and valid afterlife, a destination for the vast majority of people who simply lived and died without achieving martial glory. The purpose of many burials, particularly simple inhumations with basic grave goods, was to ensure a safe and dignified passage to Helheim, avoiding the dreaded fate of becoming a restless ghost. But the Norse cosmos was even more complex. There was also Folkvanger, specifically a hall called Sessrumnir, presided over by the goddess Freyja. Half of those who died in battle went to Valhalla, and the other half went to Folkvanger. Imagine a beautiful, serene realm where Freyja welcomed her chosen warriors. A place perhaps less focused on endless battle and more on a different kind of honor or spiritual reward. The existence of Folkvanger suggests that martial glory wasn't a monolithic concept, and that different gods offered different forms of afterlives. Reflecting the diverse aspects of Viking belief, this adds a layer of nuance to the common perception that all brave warriors only went to Valhalla. Historians still debate the precise relationship between Valhalla and Folkvanger, Were they two distinct destinations for similar types of warriors? Or did they represent different aspects of warrior honor? The sagas offer hints, but no definitive answer. Definitive beyond these major realms. There were other possibilities. Some beliefs suggested that the dead might remain connected to their burial mound, residing within it as guardians of their lineage, or even influencing the prosperity of their descendants. Imagine your spirit lingering within the earth where your body lay, a silent protector of your family's land. This concept reinforces the importance of burial mounds as ancestral monuments and places of power. Then there were the dreaded restless dead, the Draugr, malevolent spirits who rose from their graves to torment the living, often a result of improper burial rites or particularly evil deeds in life. The fear of Draugr motivated people to ensure proper funerals, providing sufficient grave goods and performing rituals meticulously to ensure the deceased stayed put. The journey to these afterlives was often envisioned as a difficult one, necessitating the grave goods we discussed earlier. The ship was the literal vessel, the horse, the transport, the food, the sustenance. These physical provisions were believed to aid the soul in traversing the realms, navigating the treacherous paths, and enduring the challenges of the spiritual landscape. Death was an active transition, not a passive cessation of existence. The role of fate, or weird, was also crucial. Your destiny, including your death and subsequent afterlife, was often seen as preordained. However, this didn't negate the importance of living honorably or dying bravely. These actions could still influence which specific path you're wired would lead you down. The belief in glorious death wasn't about avoiding death, but about embracing it on terms that would ensure the best possible outcome in the cosmic scheme. The shift towards Christianity would, over time, fundamentally alter these beliefs. The complex, polytheistic afterlife of the Norse would be replaced by the singular heaven and hell of Christian theology. The elaborate burials, the grave goods, and certainly the human sacrifices would gradually cease, replaced by simpler inhumations in consecrated ground. Reflecting a new spiritual paradigm, this transition was slow and often involved a fascinating blend of old and new beliefs, a testament to the enduring power of ingrained traditions. So, as you drift into a peaceful slumber, let your mind explore the various destinations of the Viking afterlife, from the feasting halls of Valhalla to the misty chill of Helheim. Each realm offered a unique fate, shaped by life and death. It was a cosmos rich with meaning, a powerful incentive for a warrior to die bravely, and a complex tapestry of beliefs that guided every aspect of their funerary rites. You close your eyes and the vibrant, sometimes terrifying, landscapes of the Viking afterlife begin to soften, replaced by the hushed, careful work of the present. You are now standing, not in a realm of gods and spirits, but in the muddy trenches of an archaeological dig. Tonight, you'll discover how archaeology's silent stories unearth ancient truths, piecing together the brutal realities and profound beliefs of Viking funerals from fragmented remains. These are not grand sagas recited by poets, but whispers from the earth, painstakingly recovered and interpreted by dedicated scholars. Imagine yourself on a windswept field in Scandinavia, or perhaps on a remote island. A team of archaeologists, often battling the elements, is meticulously sifting through layers of soil, centimeter by painstaking centimeter. They're not looking for shining gold, though. That's a nice bonus. But for the faint traces of human activity that tell a story, a discoloration in the soil that indicates a vanished wooden structure, a scattering of rivets that were once part of a mighty ship, or a fragile fragment of bone that hints at a life lived 1,000 years ago. This is where the true, unromanticized truth of Viking funerals truly begins to emerge. Not from legend, but from the tangible evidence left behind. The discovery of a burial mound is often the first clue. These impressive earthen structures, raised by Viking hands, are like giant time capsules. Archaeologists use ground-penetrating radar and other non-invasive techniques to map what lies beneath before carefully beginning to excavate. The process is slow, precise, and utterly vital. Each layer of soil, each artifact is carefully documented, photographed, and mapped before it's removed. Imagine the thrill of uncovering the faint outline of a ship's hull, or the glint of an ancient brooch, knowing you are the first person to see it in a millennium. Once the burial chamber or ship impression is exposed, the real detective work begins. The conditions of the soil dictate what remains. In acidic soils, organic materials like wood, textiles, and bodies often decay completely, leaving only metal objects or faint ghost impressions in the earth. But in waterlogged or anaerobic oxygen-deprived conditions, like those found in the famous Osberg and Gokstad ship burials in Norway, organic material can be remarkably preserved. This is where you might find intact timbers of a ship, fragments of elaborately woven textiles, delicate wooden carvings, and even surprisingly well-preserved human and animal remains. Imagine seeing the actual ropes that tied a Viking ship, or the intricate patterns on a centuries-old piece of fabric, details that bring their world vividly to life. The human remains themselves are a treasure trove of information. Osteoarchaeologists specialists in human bones can determine the age, sex, and often the health of the deceased. They can identify signs of disease, old injuries, and even the type of work an individual performed based on bone wear and tear. Imagine examining a Viking skeleton and seeing evidence of healed fractures, indicating a life of combat, or signs of arthritis from years of heavy labor. This scientific analysis complements the sagas, giving a physical voice to the silent dead, the grave goods, as we've discussed. Provide invaluable insights. The types of weapons, tools, jewelry, and even food remains found. Tell archaeologists about the deceased's social status, their gender, their profession, and their beliefs. The sheer quantity and quality of items in rich burials, like the Oseberg or Sutton Hoo, an Anglo-Saxon site with strong Norse connections, demonstrate the immense wealth and power of the individuals interred within. Conversely, simpler graves with only a few personal items speak to the lives of the common folk. The placement of these items, their condition, whether broken or intact, all contribute to the narrative. One particularly fascinating and often chilling aspect of archaeological findings is the evidence for human sacrifice. As mentioned with Ibn Fadlan's account, archaeologists look for specific patterns, multiple human remains in a single grave, where one is clearly primary and others are secondary, often positioned unnaturally or showing signs of violent trauma inconsistent with battle. For instance, in the famous boat burial at Vendel in Sweden, several individuals found in a chieftain's grave showed signs of ritual execution. While such finds are rare, they are powerful corroboration for the brutal practices described in historical texts, reinforcing the idea that some Vikings took their social hierarchies and afterlife beliefs to extreme lengths. Historians still debate the definitive interpretation of every multi-burial site. Were all secondary individuals truly sacrifices? Or were some perhaps loyal retainers who died naturally and were interred alongside their master? Out of respect, the evidence can be ambiguous, requiring careful analysis and comparison with other findings. The very construction of the burial mounds and ship burials also provides data. The engineering involved, the types of wood used, the tools employed, all speak to the technological capabilities and organizational skills of the Viking Age communities. These monumental structures are not just graves, they are feats of ancient engineering, designed to stand for centuries, if not millennia. So, as you drift into a peaceful slumber, appreciate the silent, painstaking work of archaeology. It is through the careful excavation of muddy fields, the analysis of fragmented bones, and the interpretation of rust-eaten artifacts that the brutal, yet profoundly spiritual, Truths of Viking funerals are truly brought to light. These silent stories, whispered from the earth, allow us to understand a world that has long since vanished. Giving voice to the dead and wisdom to the living, you close your eyes and the muddy trenches of the archaeological dig fade, replaced by a sense of shifting spiritual currents. You are witnessing a profound transformation in the Viking world, Christianity's shifting sands. A gradual yet inevitable force that slowly but surely began to erode the ancient burial practices. Replacing the dramatic pyres and grave goods with a new, more uniform spiritual landscape. This wasn't a sudden conversion, it was a centuries-long process. A fascinating blend of old beliefs clinging to the edges of the new, subtly altering how Vikings approached death and the afterlife. Imagine the arrival of the first missionaries, perhaps Irish monks or Frankish priests. Stepping onto shores accustomed to the gods of Asgard and Valhalla, they brought with them a radically different cosmology, a single, all-powerful God, a singular heaven or hell, and a concept of salvation through faith and good deeds, rather than glorious death in battle or the meticulous provision of grave goods. Initially, these new ideas would have seemed alien, even weak, to a people whose entire worldview was shaped by their pagan traditions and the promise of a warrior's afterlife. However, over time, the influence of Christianity began to grow. Trade routes brought not only goods but also ideas. Viking raids on Christian lands exposed them to new cultures and beliefs. As Viking leaders established kingdoms in Christian Europe like in England or Normandy, conversion often became a political and economic necessity, a way to integrate into the broader European power structure. With the conversion of chieftains and kings, often came the conversion of their people, sometimes by decree, sometimes through gradual persuasion. The most immediate and visible change in funerary practices was the decline of cremation and the rise of inhumation burial in consecrated ground. Christian theology emphasizes the resurrection of the body, making cremation less desirable, as it was believed to hinder this future resurrection. Therefore, bodies were increasingly buried in cemeteries associated with new churches. Imagine the scene instead of a roaring pyre, a quiet procession to a churchyard where the deceased is laid into the earth, often without the elaborate grave goods that once accompanied them. The practice of including grave goods also gradually diminished. Christian belief taught that wealth in the afterlife was spiritual, not material. Your salvation depended on your faith and your deeds, not on your earthly possessions. Therefore, the elaborate swords, jewelry, and even sacrificed animals that once filled pagan graves became increasingly rare. Early Christian Viking burials might still contain a few personal items, a lingering nod to old traditions. But over time, these dwindled. Imagine a warrior being buried not with his sword, but with a simple crucifix, symbolizing a new kind of spiritual armor. Historians still debate the specific timeline and regional variations of the decline in grave goods. Did it happen uniformly, or did certain areas cling to older customs longer than others? Archaeological evidence suggests a patchwork of practices. Reflecting the slow and uneven process of conversion, the construction of monumental burial mounds also declined, while some early Christian elites might have adopted a slightly modified form of mound burial. The focus shifted from asserting ancestral claims through impressive physical structures to seeking eternal rest in a common, sacred ground overseen by the church. The individual monument gave way to the communal cemetery, reflecting a new emphasis on the collective Christian body. The concept of human sacrifice in burials, already likely rare and confined to the highest echelons, would have been among the first pagan practices to be condemned and suppressed by Christian authorities. The taking of human life for ritualistic purposes was anathema to Christian teachings, and its cessation would have been a clear sign of the new faith's ascendance. While traces of older beliefs might have lingered in folk practices, the overt ritualistic killings ceased. However, the transition was not always clean or immediate. for many generations. There was a fascinating syncretism, a blending of old and new beliefs. You might find burials where Christian symbols, like a cross, appear alongside a Thor's hammer amulet, or graves where the body is oriented in a Christian manner, but still contains a few personal items reminiscent of older grave goods. This tells you that for many, conversion was not an instant abandonment of all they had known, but a gradual absorption of new ideas into an existing framework. Imagine a Viking farmer, perhaps baptized, still instinctively leaving a small offering for the land spirits. Just in case, the very language and mythology also underwent transformation. While the pagan sagas continued to be told, Christian themes and interpretations began to filter in. The powerful, often violent, Norse gods were gradually replaced by the gentle, forgiving figure of Christ, or sometimes demonized as figures of evil. This shift in the spiritual narrative slowly but surely reshaped how people understood their place in the cosmos and their ultimate destiny. So, as you drift into a peaceful slumber, reflect on the profound, quiet revolution that swept through the Viking world, the dramatic ship burials, the vast grave goods, and the chilling sacrifices slowly gave way to the simpler, more uniform rituals of Christianity. It was a change that redefined death, the afterlife, and ultimately, the very identity of a people, transforming raiders into settlers and pagans into Christians. Leaving behind a fascinating archaeological record of this spiritual metamorphosis, you close your eyes, and the echoes of Christian chants and fading pagan rites dissipate into a profound silence. You are no longer standing on ancient shores or in muddy digs, but floating in the quiet space of reflection. Tonight, you'll feel the echoes of the departed, the enduring legacy of Viking death rituals, reminding us that even in their brutality, these practices spoke to universal human desires, remembrance, continuation, and the hope for something beyond. The stories whispered from the earth, through the sagas, and by early chroniclers, form a tapestry that continues to fascinate and inform our understanding of a complex people. Think back to the raw power of the ship burials, the meticulous care taken in preparing the body, the sheer volume of wealth poured into grave goods. This wasn't just about showing off. This was about belief, about an unwavering conviction that the journey after death was as real, as vital, as any voyage undertaken by a longship. The Viking approach to death forces us to confront our own mortality, and how different cultures grapple with the unknown. They face death head-on, not with fear of an empty void, but with a practical, almost optimistic view of a continuation, albeit in a different realm. The presence of the vulva, the skilled shaman in navigating the spiritual currents, reminds us of the profound human need for guidance in the face of the ultimate mystery. Her chants, her rituals, her connection to the unseen world underscore how societies have always sought to make sense of death, to provide comfort and direction for both the living and the departed. Even in our modern world, with all its science, we still seek rituals and meanings around death, a testament to this deep-seated human need, the brutal truth of human sacrifice. While deeply unsettling to modern sensibilities, illuminates the extreme commitment some Vikings held for their beliefs and social hierarchies. It's a chilling reminder that morality and ethics are culturally constructed, evolving concepts, and that the value of individual life has been perceived very differently across time. It forces us to ask difficult questions about power, devotion, and the boundaries of belief, reminding you that history is rarely, if ever, simple or comfortable. Yet, amidst the violence and the practicalities of survival, there was also deep respect, the painstaking craftsmanship of the grave goods, the communal effort in raising a burial mound, the very act of preparing a body for its final journey. These were acts of profound honor and love, expressed in ways that might seem alien to us, but were deeply meaningful to them. The emotional impact of loss, the desire to provide for their loved ones even after death, transcends time and culture, the archaeological discoveries, the silent stories unearthed from the earth, are perhaps the most powerful echoes. They are tangible links to a world long gone, allowing us to reconstruct not just how Vikings buried their dead, but how they lived, what they valued, and what they feared. Every rivet, every bone fragment, every preserved textile whispers details that no saga could fully convey, adding layers of authenticity and depth to our understanding. It's the ultimate cold case investigation, providing pieces of a puzzle spanning 1,000 years. And finally, the slow, pervasive shift towards Christianity, the blending of old and new, speaks to the enduring adaptability of human belief. It shows how even the most deeply ingrained traditions can evolve, how new ideas can take root, transforming cultures from within. It's a reminder that history is not static. It's a constant process of change, adaptation, and reinterpretation, where the past never truly dies but merely takes on new forms. So, as your mind drifts into the deepest part of the night, consider the Vikings, not just as fierce warriors, but as a people who grappled with death with a unique blend of practicality, brutality, and profound spiritual conviction. Their funerals were not just farewells, they were powerful acts of belief, designed to navigate the journey to the afterlife with strength, honor, and perhaps a touch of wild, untamed glory. The echoes of their departed souls still resonate, inviting us to ponder the enduring mysteries of life, death, and what lies beyond. The longships have crumbled to dust. The pyres have long since turned to ash, and the vulva's chants are silent. Yet, the stories, preserved in the earth and in ancient texts, continue to tell tales of journeys beyond the veil, of a people who face the ultimate unknown with a defiant and unwavering spirit. Let that quiet strength, that ancient certainty, carry you into your own peaceful slumber.